Hello, my name is John Lynch, and this is assignment 1 for Lynch-376. This assignment was regarding the input-output options for our basic use of CM command prompt in Python. The start of my code starts with importing system and getopt, which are both useful modules in Python. System has to do with using the command line, and getopt helps read the command line and user input. Because our tests have to be identical, there's a few parts where I just inputted a regular print statement so that it can match up perfectly with the test that we read. So the very first line of my code is a basic print statement where I print standard input. This matches up earlier where we have to use standard input. Where we have to use the line standard input with a colon at the end. There was a few errors in my code a bit earlier where I was getting standard input mixed up, so it has to be the same way as it's shown in the homework assignment. After we do the standard input, we're able to go to the part where we use a user-based input. So this is what the user can type in. So we have a while loop. We put our variable user text equal to system, which is what we imported earlier, and then the read line function with the standard in, which is pretty much whatever the user types in. And this is a basic while loop that automatically returns whatever the user types in. We want to make sure that this, after we print it, we want to make sure that there's an end with blank space, so that we don't have a big, we don't have a paragraph of a space. There was a few times where there's the output file, there's a space than what was needed, and that caused an error in the test. So we just keep doing this user text loop until we press Ctrl+Z, and then that ends the loop. And then after we end the loop, we can print our command line arguments. Command line arguments are what is used with the getopt and system function. Those are our three arguments, which are our three options, which is -o, -c, and -h. -o and -t are supposed to return whatever is typed after them in the command line, while -h is going to return nothing regardless of what is typed after it. So we're going to use our getopt and a try function. So we're going to create our variables ops and arguments. We're going to use the getopt module with the getopt function, and our options are going to be the arguments from 1 to the end of whatever's in the command line. If we put this to 0, it would use the Python .py file, the file name, because that's always the system, that's the first argument of the system, and that will cause a few issues, so we don't want that to happen. And then we're going to put in our arguments of OTH, which is what our basic arguments are. And now if we also added in this little exception error message, which pretty much says if we have something that's not OT and H, we're going to print a regular error message and then quit the system. So after we have this set up, so we have our command line set up with our three arguments, we're going to make a list of 3 false arguments, and then we're going to use this into our loop right here. So we're going to iterate through our ops system argument file, and now we're going to break that down into 2 parts because there's 2 options each one. And then we're going to break it down to options and arguments inside of our ops. And now for each option, if it's equal to the predefined functions that we talked about earlier, we're going to make it do a certain thing. So if our O is equal to -O, we're going to make sure our command option list is going to be equal to the A. So the first command option list isn't going to be false, it's going to be equal to A, which is the argument, and pretty much the argument is whatever is after the -O. So if I put in hello, -O hello, it's going to change false to hello. Else if the O is equal to -t, likewise it's going to change the second one to whatever argument we put in there. Now, if it's -h, no matter what we put into it, it's going to be true, which is just going to be blank and return blank. So that's our 3 options for our code, and that's going to print out the list down here. So after we set up our list, where we have everything inputted correctly, we're going to do the print statements here. So if command option list is the first one, so we pretty much pick the first option or the first element of our command option list, we're going to print out option 1 in this format, followed by, of course, option list 1, index of 0. And then likewise for the first one, we're going to do the index of 1 to get option 2. And then for option 3, we're just going to type out option 3 because we never actually print anything. So it doesn't really matter what type of, whatever's in the index isn't going to make a difference because it's always going to be blank. And now if we run our program using our Python file, excuse me, we have our standard input, and then we can do our little test here. So once we type it in using our user text area over here, we can see that whatever we type in is going to be put as user text, and then once the user text is input into the while loop, it prints out the while loop and then the end line of a blank, and then it goes immediately down to the next area, and it keeps doing that until I press Control Z. And because I didn't input anything after the py part, it's just going to return nothing because there's no command line arguments. And of course, if we type in -T or -O as our first option, and type in option, and we type in zebra again, followed by Control Z, it's going to return option. Now, of course, if we do -T test, likewise, it will return two options, option and test. And of course, if we type in -H, this should be blank, and we do our zebra, Control Z, it's going to return blank regardless of what we put in. And also, it doesn't necessarily have to be in this order, as the test determined that it should be out of order and still work the same way. Because we have a list, and because we iterate through the list in the same way each time in our code, it doesn't matter what way you put in the option, and at the start it's going to come out as 2. So instead of this being 1, it's going to be 2, because that's the way that a command line is set up. This also works with the tests that were used by Professor Hart. So if we run each test, test 1 terminates properly, and then if we run test 2, test 2, it terminates successfully, and we get the 9 points. So that's my code. Yep. Thank you for watching.